This is my birdie on day 28 of this compassionate response to the virus crisis, and so this week I've been focusing on coping with isolation. So we've had 6 sessions so far, well, 6 including today, and what I've looked at this week has been quite an interesting range of things, really. So on the first session we did in this series, I was looking at the Meggiya Sutta, so the Buddha's advice to Meggiya, who went off to the mango grove, and his mind was just all over the place. He couldn't meditate because it was just full of negative mental states. So the Buddha advised him to first of all just be around people who were more experienced, who he looked up to, who had qualities that he actually wanted to embody, and then on that basis he would want to be like them. So he would practice ethics naturally, and then he could talk about problems that came up with other people regularly. And so he'd refine his ethics, and then that would feed into his meditation being more concentrated, more skillful, and then on the basis of that, he would be able to see more clearly into the nature of reality and develop wisdom. And then in the following session, we looked at fear and dread. So the Buddha's teaching on how to cope with fear. And the basic idea behind that was that when fear arose, anxiety arose, you didn't just stop, which is our tendency, is to just stop and feel a bit paralysed, but just to find a way of just carrying on doing what you're doing, and in a way to be mindful. So be mindful of the feeling and deal with it appropriately. So not to push it away, but not to indulge in it too much, or let it overcome you too much. And to work with mindfulness, I suppose, with that fear, following what we were doing last week, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, following that teaching. And then the following session we looked into organisation. So when we're on our own, when we're it's good to be organised. It's good to have a structure. And to have a sense of mastery, mastering what we have, knowing what we've done, what we've achieved, so we feel good about ourselves, and knowing what we're trying to do and whether we're achieving it or not, and recording our time and planning our time, that sort of thing. And then in the following session we looked at shame and guilt. So the idea there was that sometimes shame can be helpful. So when we've actually done something that's been harmful to ourselves or others, then it's appropriate to feel a sense of regret and to not want to do it again. And so that's actually a positive mental state. But we also have shame in the sense that where we feel ashamed about something, it isn't necessarily anything we've even done. Sometimes, it's more our kind of stuff from our background, that's just kind of makes us feel ashamed about everything. So that isn't very helpful. So it paralyses us and stops us actually doing what's going to help the world. So putting that to one side and trying to stay down the middle of the path, middle of the road, not go to the extremes and fall down the potential hill. You got a potential well and you got a potential hill. So I said our tendency is if we're slightly away from the centre, we tend to go to the extreme, or we're slightly the other way, we go to the extreme of doing too much or too little. So it's hardest to stay in balance in the middle there, with everything that we need in place. We have to make the effort to stay in the middle. And then yesterday we looked at creativity, and I put some little talks from YouTube onto the Facebook page for you to look at, and we looked at I looked at a little bit of my own experience of doing art, and we had a little session for 10 minutes of just making stuff, which was really great to see see the results and see the feedback. And I just played around with one of my things. It's not quite finished or anything, but made something out of something. And then so I did have the aim to do these sessions, carry on doing these sessions from when Boris Johnson in the UK Prime Minister announced the whole thing about not gathering together. So it was the following day I thought I need to respond to this. So I started doing sessions, and so that was 4 weeks ago. So that was like today's day 28 of this sequence. And what's happened? It's been really interesting because as I've kind of thought, well, what can I teach? What needs to happen next? What's fallen out has been basically four series of sessions, 4 series of talks in a way. So there's been introducing meditation was like the first one, and then the second, and then after that I started to look into the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the verses from the Bardo. So the Bardo is the intermediate state, and it's like the dangerous pathway that when we're tempted to, we feel challenged, and then we want to go to something familiar. But the Buddha's saying, or the 5 Buddhas are saying, you need to go towards the intensity and the bright light of reality rather than trying to hide in some sort of way. And those verses are really inspiring. We looked at the 5 Buddhas who appear in the state after, according to Tibetan Buddhism, in your mind after death, and that there are opportunities to become enlightened. So that was an interesting little series. And then the final one of those was Varochana, who's the white Buddha in the centre of the mandala, and he's associated with the lion, and the Buddha is said to roar the lion's roar of the Dharma. So the lion is the most awe-inspiring animal in the jungle, and so the Buddhists kind of say this is how things are. So the following week, what I did was I unpacked the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness over like 9 sessions or something like that. And then this last week, it's been moving on to, well, it'd be good to try and address. I thought it'd be good to address stuff around isolation and how people cope. Give people tips about what issues come up, how to cope with all of that. As it seems possible that this might go on for months. So I thought, people are going to be going crazy, and if they don't have experience of dealing with solitude and isolation and stuff. But Buddhists actually move towards that and embrace that and try and work with being on your own, being in silence, those sorts of things. So this has been a really great series, I think, this last week. And then I have had thoughts about, I was feeling a bit tired doing all these sessions, and I did have a thought like maybe after 3 weeks I could have 3 days off or something, And then I thought, no, I want to carry on and do forever. No, not really, but just keep going. But actually, I think I am getting quite tired now, and so just the thought of like, oh, well, if I do 28 days and then have a week off, that seems like the kind of a sort of Buddhist thing to do. Practice what I preach, have time off. Recover, get replenished and things. But I will pick it all up again in a week and do another month. So I do another 28 days, and hopefully new ideas will come in, and maybe even new kind of ways of doing these sessions. And I'm quite excited about what can be what can be done, maybe even interviewing other order members and just having discussions. So yeah, I want to try and be on a work my knowledge into the internet, really, so that it's more out there, and I'm having sort of discussions with people on a good sort of good level, really, on a high level, that sort of thing. So I thought that today the appropriate topic would be going on solitary retreat. So in the early part of my being a Buddhist, I didn't really, you're advised to go on solitary about once a year if you're experienced, and I couldn't really afford it. But when my mother died in 2008, then the money I kind of inherited from that just allowed me to actually do the things that I would have really liked to have done before there. So I went on solitary retreat, and often down to Cornwall, and really right down the end near Land's End, about 4 miles away from Land's End. And I did 3 weeks and 4 weeks, so sorts of periods. Every year I would go for at least 2 weeks and just be on my own in nature in a beautiful place. So I want to talk about that and share some of my experience of that, and at the end of this session, we'll do some meditation. But before that, we'll do some body work. And so if you want to stand up, we'll do some of that. Okay. So let's begin by go back to the good old doing. So remember, do means way. It's a self-massage from the Japanese tradition, which is from the same systems that you have, like things like shiatsu, acupuncture, all those. And those interventions were, in a way, before we had science, the science that we've come to know. It was like people would. Well, it was a kind of science. People just work out, well, what worked, what had certain effects, and so that's what we're looking for in anything like this. It's just like, well, we're looking for the actual effect. So here we're looking for just waking ourselves up, waking our body up. Backs of your hands, up your arms. We don't need any scientific proof that this works. We just need to know that it works in our own experience. That's the main thing. Get around the base of your neck, brushing down, and then just swinging backwards. So just turning at an angle like 45 degrees over there. Put your left leg forward, and then just swinging your arms, get a rhythm going. Just put your busy mind to one side. That your mind that always wants to be in control of everything. So this is you working on your body with no reference to your mind at all. Your mind can just sit back and have a break. and allow itself to be supported by the energy that you're developing in your body through doing this exercise. Just having a sense of no limitations here on time, that you're not thinking, oh, I'll stop in a minute, or just have a sense that, you know, you might just keep doing this for a long time. Just have that internal attitude, and that, I think that just helps us to let go into this particular thing and actually give it our full attention, and thus get the maximum benefit out of it. So if a bit of it is holding back and just on pause waiting for the next thing after this, then, you know, we're going to be holding on in some sort of way, and we're going to be not fully present. Okay, and then just turn the other direction at 45-degree angle and put your right foot forward and do the same thing again. Yeah, just make your mind have a kind of lazy sort of attitude towards all of this. And just enjoying the air rushing past your hands and shifting sensations as you with your clothes in your around your arms, you know, whatever's happening there, and being aware of the sensations in your back and energy in your back and any areas of pain or tension in your shoulders and down your back. Having a sense of just over time that if you keep doing this, that something is going to lengthen, something is going to shift. So we have to actually be in the right place, in the right domain. So the Theravada Buddhists talk about clear comprehension of domain. It's the Gochara Sampajanya. So it means knowing that when we're trying to work with the body, that we're actually in the body and not somewhere else, like in the mind or in thoughts. I can feel my own desire to, let's get on to the next thing. Let's get to the end of the session. Yeah. Need to not do that, but be present. Actually, it's quite enjoyable. Okay, and then rotating your hips. Just having a sense of marking the four corners, so the pointing your hips forward and then to one side, to the back, to the other side, to the front. Four corners. It's having a sense of mind and body being together, so that when you're moving, your body's not ahead of your mind and your mind's not ahead of your body, but they're there together in the same place. Again, just allow your mind to just be kind of lazy, a lazy passenger, rather than an active driver. It is amazing what you can do actually if you just do some simple exercises that you just make up, but you just keep body and mind together. And I can feel my own mind just quietening down and becoming ready for sitting meditation and being less in the way of that. And this is just through working on the body in a mindful way. So, yeah, slow movement, keeping the mind and body in the same place. And, you know, you can do walking meditation in the garden. It's going really slowly, just noticing everything, sensations of the grass under your feet. Or you can do that in the flat, sensations of the carpet or the floor. And then just put your forehead in the palms of your hands. And just having a sense of holding your forehead, holding your mind, and giving your mind to your hands to be held. Maybe even having a sense that your hands are just kind of drawing out any stress or tension from your forehead. And then just rub your hands together and maybe just imagine taking that stress and just throwing it out the window. You know, things, what you picked up from your forehead, just do it again. So just allowing your hands to absorb any tension in your mind. And then just kind of flinging it out the window. Get lost. Okay. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of Qigong just to, I think it just helps to smooth the energy out. So putting your hands on your stomach, one on top of the other. Just when you notice you're breathing out, just bend your knees and straighten your knees on the in-breath. So going down on the out-breath and coming up on the in-breath, down on the out-breath and coming up on the in-breath, down on the out-breath, up on the in-breath, down on the out-breath, up on the in-breath. And then put your hands out the front, and then on the next in-breath bringing them up slowly to your chin, turning at the chin, taking them down to your hips, turning at the hips, bringing them up to your chin with the in-breath, taking them down, bending your knees. So bringing your hands up and straighten your knees. Take your hands down, bend your knees. Imagining a ball of energy coming up the centre of your spine, through the middle of your body, with the hands. Then next time just keep going past your chin up into the air, the ball expands outwards, and then you go down the sides. Same again, big circle, up the middle, ball expands outwards at the top, down the sides. Last one, do it slowly, more slowly. And just let your hands come to rest at your sides. And then moving with mindfulness of your body into your seated meditation position. Just really taking your time so that you don't disturb whatever positive sensations have now developed in your body in terms of stillness and vitality. So getting used to being in a different position now, and being aware of the experience of being in this position. So how is it different? How are the sensations different, say in your legs and in your back in this new position? So for instance, I can feel a lot more sensation in my legs because my trousers are now pressing against them. My legs are crossed. So just tuning into whatever you're experiencing, particularly what you're experiencing in terms of energy in your body, and just having a sense of your spine just rising up balanced naturally from whatever you're sitting on. And yes, keeping your mind lazy so it's not getting involved with your body. Body's just supporting your mind and emotions to be in the state that they're in. And then just focusing on the actual structure of your body, so where the bones are in the body, where the muscles are, where the organs are. And just keep coming back to the reality of your body, so that you're working from the reality. So you're letting the bones take the weight, and you're letting the muscles soften because they don't need to be holding on if the body's balanced, and you're allowing the organs to kind of calm down in their metabolism, so you don't need to be doing that much. So what we're going to do to this morning is the just sitting practice. So we're just it is what it says on the tin. It just means just sitting, just letting our body support us, and trying to avoid getting into doing anything. And this meditation is really good for absorbing situations. So we've done 28 sessions in a row here, and just absorbing that experience, and just allowing it to settle, and just kind of, it's good to do just sitting at the end of things, when we're trying to absorb, and then before we then move on to whatever's next. So again, just acting as if you have an absolutely immense amount of time, that you're going to be sitting here for days and days. Just have that attitude, and then the 12 minutes or so that we're going to be sitting here just won't seem so long, and we will be more present. So we're not rushing on to the next thing. Just notice if time has arisen for you as a factor. How long am I sitting here for? And then if you've become a bit tensed up around that, so again, just let that sort of time just be endless, and just concentrate on just letting your body just sit there. The structure of your body takes the weight, and then your muscles can soften because they'll be supported, and your organs can continue to quieten down because they're not really being drawn on as much as normal. And if there is any tension there, just putting it down, but putting it down in a way that works through the structure of your body. Through working with the structure of your body, through your structure, the structure of your body. Keeping your mind lazy but receptive. So just taking your time, just coming out of that meditation. Okay, so the idea for this session arose yesterday when I was just looking at I don't know how I got there, but I was just looking at this this video of this guy who was he was on a deserted island, and he was kind of coping with these mosquitoes, and trying to he was camping out basically. He had a speedboat. It was somewhere around Australia, somewhere like that. He had this speedboat, and he which he used to get to these deserted islands, and but there's something about the whole thing of him being there, and just everything was just so simple, but he was having to cope with the situation, and it just really reminded me of like being on solitary retreat and what happens with that. So I haven't been last year, but previous years, every year I would go down to Cornwall in southwest England, and you get such fantastic skies there. I mean, this is a photograph I took in St Ives. So there's a campsite looking down onto St Ives. And it's ridiculous, like £8.50 a night, just backpackers camping with that view, with like 180 degrees of sea you're looking at. So yes, every year I would go down and maybe spend a bit of time at different places, and I was really looking for somewhere to just be by the sea, so to do a solitary retreat by the sea. And I had a friend who lived down in Newlyn, which is a proper fishing port down next to Penzance, and it's actually my favourite place in the world, really. Because of my background in Hull, I was born in Hull. Hull was a fishing town, and so I asked my friend. I said, "Oh, do you know of anywhere that I could do a solitary down here by the sea?" And he says, "Well, I know somebody who owns a farm, but it's not next to the sea. It's inland a bit, But anyway, so I ended up going to this place, and at first I was in a caravan, so I'd be staying in a caravan, and everything's kind of very stripped down, So the place where you meditate, it's like you need to set up a little shrine for yourself, and then it would be sort of like squeezing in there, and life just becomes stripped down. So that video on YouTube of the guy in Australia just really reminded me of that. So I'm going to post it onto Facebook so you can look at it. It's unfortunately he's not vegetarian, so he does actually harpoon a fish and eat and fry it and all that, and he's killing the mosquitoes. But I think if you can ignore, apart from that, if you can ignore those sort of things, I think it really speaks to what it's like to be in a very simple situation, and you're just dealing with your immediate needs. Have something to eat, but actually the weather's coming in, it's changing, and so I've been in the situation doing a camping solitary down in Cornwall, and but it's so delightful when you're just doing something like cooking some breakfast on a little kind of camping stove in nature, like with a camping bench. I was there once in October after doing a load of retreats for about 6 weeks, and I ended up in Cornwall, and there was about 5 tents on the site, and very quiet, very, very quiet, and just cooking me breakfast and sitting on the camping table thing. Yeah, so I was in a caravan to start with, but then I ended up being in this room. So it's like a long, thin room with a bed. So that this is looking the other direction. So you come in here, and then there's a bed on a platform. So the whole thing's about 7 meters long or something, and then you've got a little kitchen there. Very simple, kettle, one ring butane gas cooker, and some storage space for food. So on this, I would sit in that chair, sit in that chair, and just it's kind of a small. It's not that small, but simple aesthetic space with some windows there, deluxe windows that you could look out, you could open and let the air in. So some days it'd be great to just, like, when it's a sunnier day, just open the windows and just have the breeze just coming in. And here's the same thing at night. So just really nice to have a kind of evening. And I would set up there's like a what they call them, a poof or something. It's like a kind of, I set up a little shrine on that, a little kind of Buddhist shrine on that. And then here's a panorama I took on my phone of the same place. So there's my shrine in the middle, a little Buddha, candle and things, and then so looking that way is the bed on the platform, and there's my rucksack. Looking the other way is the table and the chair and all that sort of thing. And I think what happens is, like, you just get, like, really intimate with your space. So when you are actually not on solitary retreats, like you're trying to be as isolated as possible, so you're not having contact with other people. So you'd sort of switch your phone off, and you'd sort your food out in advance so you've got enough. And maybe you need to go out and get some food, but at times, but then you would do that to minimise the actual time you spent in the world or interacting with anybody, and just keep the principle of being on your own there. So I think what happens, like, when you are on your own like that, sometimes you experience the kind of isolation and fear and dread and all that sort of thing. But then at other times you kind of, like, settle. It starts to dawn on you that I've got this time now. I've got this time. I've got this time for me. I can do what I like. And so it can be some of the most delightful experiences that we can have when we're just on our own, and we've got no pressure to do anything for anybody else. And it would be fantastic, to get up in the morning and meditate, and maybe do a bit of walking meditation. I'd walk up and down the room, and then I would do some breakfast and then take it outside. And the farm was on my bit of the farm was, like, separate from the main house, so I didn't come across the owner, Jane, hardly ever. And I would just cut through and there's a field that just, like, sloped downwards. It was halfway up a hill, so just sitting in a plastic chair with me breakfast and a cup of tea, and just looking at this view and just thinking, I don't have to do anything apart from look at this view. And that part of Cornwall, I think once you get past St Ives, it's almost like it changes. Like, it changes into a different sort of place, and that's why the artists used to go down there. It's like the light is just incredible, and I think the life is incredible as well. I think in the hedgerows there's just much more spiders and more. It's just intense, the amount of life there. And there was on the hill, there was a bit of it was fenced off at the top of the hill, and there were these feral Dartmoor ponies there, on about 6 of them, which if walked over the hill, you had to be a bit careful with them because they just looked really wild, and they acted like wild, horses. So yeah, there's something about nature just being like more turned up, full on in some places like that. So I think that is the main thing. There is this on solitary of just eventually at some point or other we just start to put everything down, and at first maybe we don't really know what to do, what we want to do, or but the advice is just to don't rush into doing anything. Don't have don't sort of have a project. Like, oh right, I'll study this, or I'll write in my journal. The main thing is this: just being with ourselves in a quiet sort of way, where we don't have any big ideas about what we're doing or not doing. So I'm going to be trying to do this for the next week. Just switch off the phone. Cut down on trips to the shops, and not have a plan, not have projects I'm wanted to do, and just face the kind of reality of what it is to be alive, to have space, to be able to do whatever I want to do within the confines of the situation, and that's it, and I think in the Buddhist teachings on higher states of consciousness or meditative states called the dhyanas, it's said that the first dhyana, which I talked about the other week, arises in isolation from unskillful mental states and sensuality. So it's like, but I think what it is, it's like and joy arises. So you start to experience joy and happiness when you're just on your own, and you don't have pressures, and you start to notice everything, and enjoy it really, and yeah. So I think that's it for today, and for this month of sessions, and I've really appreciated everyone coming along with me on the journey. It's been a regular group of people that have been practicing together and sharing experiences and things like that. So I'll post some suggestions as to where you can access other teaching, regular meditation slots and that sort of thing. And I'm going to do another 2 sessions today at lunchtime and early evening, and then that'll be the end of it for a week. But yeah, I just wish you well, and I'm definitely intending to be back and doing another month, after I've had this solitary retreat for a week. Okay, very well. Bye bye.